Today's video we're going to talk about data-driven attribution on Google Ads and why it's a must. If you're in certain situations, certain business types, you need to be doing this to get the most out of your Google Ads, and we're talking about a big substantial difference in results using another attribution type, which at this moment in time is last click would be your other option besides data-driven attribution. And so with that, I'm going to explain the times where you absolutely, like I said, want to use data-driven attribution, and potentially what are the downsides of data-driven attribution still at the same time. But for the most part, in most situations, most of you guys should be using the data-driven attribution. You should just know what are the downsides so that whatever downsides there are, you can compensate for those and make even more money. So with all that said, I will go through everything that I know about data-driven attribution as it applies to our clients' accounts, and we have a few dozen client accounts that we manage here, Google Ads accounts that we manage here at our PPC firm, and what I've learned about data-driven attribution versus last-click attribution. What are the need-to-know information points here so that you can get it all in a short video and go ahead about your day. Know that you're going to be making the right decision and making the most money with your ads. That said, we'll get into it. Google recently had shored up the amount of conversion attribution options available to their advertising. As I just mentioned, we have last click attribution and data-driven attribution. Okay, the main two differences, what are the differences between these? Last click attribution is what it's for as it pertains to conversion tracking, which you may be tracking if somebody calls or somebody fills out a contact form on your site or just purchases through your site, depending if you're doing lead generation or you're an e-commerce business. Maybe you're an e-commerce business that tracks those other things as well, which you should, because it gives you more data, gives more data for the algorithm that Google has to optimize your ads, as well as yourself. But last click will look at if somebody clicks on more than one of your Google ads. If you choose last click as the option, last click attribution as the attribution option for that particular conversion, which if you choose the last click attribution for one goal, all of the goals should have it. It's either all or none based upon what I've found, just to keep it simple for you trying to decide how this is set up. And can't think of a way or reason why you would want to do some with one, some with another. But with that said, last click would be if they clicked on multiple ads, whatever ad they clicked on last is the ad that's going to show the conversions next to it after somebody go ahead and purchases from your site or calls or fills out the contact form if that's what you're tracking through your ad campaigns. So with that said, data-driven actually doesn't look at the last click or the first click. It actually kind of spreads it out. So with that, and they don't give you an exact reason how they spread it out. Linear used to be it would give an equal, like if somebody clicked on this ad and then they purchased, both ads would get half. This is not what data-driven is. Data-driven, and personally I preferred the linear if I were going to go with another option besides last click. In some instances we would do that, and I'll talk more about that in a second. But now you got, if you don't want to do last click, you got data-driven. Data-driven does spread it out. For the most part, it looks like they spread it out fairly even. But in I should say a lot of instances now, the data-driven is still going to be better than the last click, even though we have less control as to what actual ads, what actual keywords, what actual time of the day of the week, what state the user's from, where the conversions came from, which if you didn't know, that's also possible. You can do bid changes on time of the day of the week, at the keyword level, the ad level, on age level, gender level, parental status level, and it goes on. And this is how you get better results with your ads. If you're doing adjustments on your end, you look at what has above or below average cost per conversion or cost per sale, or ROI in your account, and then you just go up or down in your bidding based upon how well that, you know, particular, if we're talking about devices, mobile versus desktop does. So you can get more of your budget going to the part of the account that naturally just does better, and then you can walk up the performance of your account that way. And you know, and with that, instead of just relying on Google, you can do some of your own adjustments. You'll get results quicker that way instead of just relying purely on Google, because the algorithm needs data, and so if you do your own adjustments sooner, you'll be able to, and intelligently, what you're doing a little bit, you'll be able to get to where your stuff's profitable quicker. You'll lose less money up front before your ads are profitable, and all that jazz. So, but anyway, those are the two attribution types. Now, when you're advertising on brand new brand terms, having last click, and I messed up here again, I apologize for this, attribution can be a boon, particularly when selling higher priced products or services as well. I.e., the same thing applies if you're just doing lead generation and you're generating leads instead of trying to get sales through the shopping cart. The reason for this is, so generally speaking, in all the campaigns we run, we'll run ads on Google search, or in addition, we might run ads on Google Display Network, and then we'll also have brand ads running. Brand ads meaning like what your trademark, your company name, all that stuff. We'll advertise on that as well, so that people who, we use Google Ads to get customers, people that don't know about us can now find us and then get to the site and hopefully purchase. For the people who don't purchase, we want them to be able to, of course, come back. We help ourselves raise the chance that somebody will come back through remarketing, which is another topic, but we also run brand ads so that ultimately when they get paid or when they talk to their wife or whatever they needed to do before they purchased or finished their research, they say, oh, okay, I'm going to make my purchase today. And then they go search for your product or service or company, which brand terms are all of those and should have all those if you're running a brand campaign. They go to type in your brand name and they can't remember exactly how it's spelled or exactly what it was or what it was phrased. And if you have a brand campaign, your ad can show up for that person and guide them to your website so they can finish their purchase. And so with that, the higher the price of product or service you have, the longer of time, as per what we call it in the marketing industry, the sales cycle window is, i.e. how long it takes the average person from the time they initially start doing research to the time that they, on average, actually finish and execute their purchase. And so the higher priced products or services, the longer that window is of time that they wait before they purchase on average, because they got to do more research, save up money, think about it more because it's a bigger decision, whatever. And so with that, if the brand campaigns really do help out a lot, particularly the campaigns that you use to get their initial awareness, which are more expensive to run in general, and which is why you use the brand campaigns, i.e., and mainly because of all the misspellings. If they know of you and they can't, and a lot of people won't remember exactly what your brand name is. They won't be able to spell it right. And if you run a brand campaign, you'll see for yourself, if you click under the search terms report, which shows you physically what people have typed in before they clicked on your brand ad, you'll get like every variation of spelling of your company name and that you can imagine there. And so, of course, instead of hoping that they find it, you spend all that money to advertise to get them to the point where they'll purchase, and you lose it at the last second. It's a waste. It's a big loss for you. And it makes it harder to get advertising to work if you have a leaky funnel. Then your funnel being you advertise to them, and then later on they go back to Google and they got to find your site again. And if they can't find your site, you lost that sale, and then therefore your conversion rates overall from that initial traffic coming in is less. And so anyway, what does this pertain to conversion attribution? Well, if you use the last click attribution, of course, when that person eventually comes back on an average 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks later, they go ahead and they type in your product name, company name, trade name, whatever you have, which you have so-called brand ads set up for. They click through and they purchase, and all the so-called weight of that purchase goes to the brand campaign, and it doesn't go to the initial ad that initially got their attention when they were searching and making a regular commercial search for your item, i.e. you sell fishing poles, they type in fishing poles for sale, they search around, they come back 6 weeks later to buy, they type in your brand name and click on your brand ad, they buy. It looks like the brand ad did all the work, and maybe even looks like you could tell yourself, well, maybe that was a customer that I got as a referral or came back or whatever. Whereas if it wasn't for the ad that they saw 6 weeks beforehand, they would have never bought from you. So with that, last click attribution makes it hard to optimize campaigns where a higher percentage of people are going to be going ahead and coming back at a later point in time, i.e. and then with tying everything together, what I said there, the more expensive the product or service, the longer on average it's going to be before they make the decision to purchase is. Therefore, the higher percentage of people that are going to click on a brand ad that you're going to run, which you should have brand ads, because if you don't, you're losing a bunch of people who will never remember, like I said, to type in your brand name the correct way or product name the correct way because they can't spell it right or just can't remember the exact phrasing or how it sounds. If they got to come back 6 weeks later to buy, it's easy to understand how they're not going to get the let alone the spelling, but just what your company or product name was called at all, and just get it close. So if you're selling something that's fairly expensive, when we're talking even if it's over $100, you're going to get a lot of people to go back and come back to your site later to actually purchase, and then they're going to go back to Google, they're going to type in your brand name, and then they're going to see your brand ad, they're going to click on it, they're going to purchase, and then it's going to make your other campaigns look like it doesn't work. And of course, you're going to turn off those ads, your sales are going to go down, and then you're going to blame the sales going down on something else. Oh, blah, 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 blah. The sales are down because it's June or whatever. I see this stuff happen all the time. When reality is, they don't think about things correctly, about how potentially cause and effect. They shut off all the ads, the sales went down, but they don't tell themselves that because the conversions did not show that they were getting sales. So therefore, even though the sales went down, even after I shut off the ads, it can't be, or so to say. It's hard enough to get, by the way, with the more expensive product or service you have, the less conversions you're going to capture because people come back later and later and later, the higher the product or service cost. So on average, we'll see here at our PPC firm, only half of the conversions that somebody gets off of a Google search ad or a display advertising ad for something that sells even for $200 or $300 on average, because people come back, and because of cookies and people delete their cookies and they switch computers and all this, it actually doesn't show the true amount of conversions we got as per what really was derived off of that ad we were running on Google search at the time. And so when you compound that with the fact that you have less click attribution and you have people clicking on that brand ad because you're running brand ads, then you're getting even less of an awareness or insight into those ads, those search ads you're running. And if you're not knowledgeable and you don't know this stuff I'm telling you here, you can make the wrong assumption that it doesn't work. You just shut it off and you've forever lost all that profit that those ads could have been making for you if you just had the right insight and information about this stuff. So if you have something that's over $100 in price, product or service, I would recommend anymore just going with data-driven attribution, particularly as you're running brand ads. And like I said, you should be running brand ads, particularly if you sell something over $100, because so many people are going to come back later and you need to be able to have them remember. If you sell a $20 broom, they're going to buy right away or not. Brand ads are less relevant, even though I would even still actually, by the way, run it then, because people get referrals or whatever, and you want them to be able to find you easily from those kind of searches as well. And there's a lot of people, they try to argue with me about the brand. It's not about It's about getting people who, it's the misspellings, period, flat out, and they say it's not worth it, they would have found me otherwise. Yes, some of those people would have found you otherwise because you're ranked organically, but other times they're spelling your stuff wrong that you don't rank organically, they're not going to find you. Of course, other people try to bid on your brand terms, and there's 4 ads ahead of you where your organic listing is, then a lot of people are just going to get diverted, and then you've lost sales that way. The gimme sales that you're supposed to get anyway, but that's another whole another point and discussion. With that said, other things to know. If you're doing any kind of multi-step marketing process, this is key to have the data-driven attribution, of course, which makes sense. And I'll give you an example of this. If you were selling an insurance product, let's say you're selling health insurance. Well, people obviously know, as in most markets, there's a period of time which people usually do research for something like that online, and then the time in which they're going to decide to go after vendors, and then there's times where they're going to actually go ahead and purchase the day that they purchase, and that time frame could be 6 months from the time people initially do the research to the time they look at vendors and the time they actually buy. And so with that itself, you want to do, if you actually are, usually you start out with the easy stuff with Google advertising, if we're just talking about that, is to go after people that are looking for like health insurance companies, health insurance products, health insurance services, where they're looking and have buyer's intent, and try to monetize that. Once you've monetized all that, you start to go after people who you're always trying to, or always should be going after the next lowest hanging fruit opportunity to make money. Looks like it's maybe a bit less profitable than what you're doing already, but not way different than what you have, because it only makes logical sense to do that, and then go after the next most profitable thing, and you keep doing that over and over again as you're finding more and more ways to ratchet up how much profit you're making from online advertising. And that same thing goes for other platforms. Is Facebook a better bet right now than trying to spend even more on Google? Well, you have to weigh it out and then you make your decisions. But anyway, specifically, regarding the health insurance example I gave you, if somebody's so in this case, after you went after people looking for health insurance policies or whatever, health insurance policies for sale, whatever, try to get that to work. If you get it to work, the next logical thing in this and many other cases, so this is another side tip that you're going to pick up, I would be going after people searching for how to buy the right insurance policy. So they're not looking exactly for a policy yet, but they're as close as possible. The closer they are to making that purchase, the easier that is going to be traffic is going to be to monetize, generally speaking, even though the traffic is more expensive, but it's not so much more expensive that you would want to go after the information seekers first. And so I'll go after people who are looking how to find the right policy. In a conjunction with that, I would go after people who are looking for reviews of the competitor itself, because I can siphon people off out of the market that way. Assuming that we've already went after people looking for that competitor, literally speaking. Because generally you go after people looking for the product, and then people looking for the competitor, and then people looking how to buy ultimately the right policy, and looking at reviews for the competitors, and then you keep going. Then it's ultimately do I need a tips to basically or do I need health insurance, and so on and so forth, and you just keep going down the line. Anyway, if you're going to go after people who are how to buy the right health insurance plan for me, and target that search on Google search, you should know when you target that, you're not going to go right for the sale. It's really dumb. I see people still doing this all the time. Well, they'll try to advertise on that term and then just have a ad that says health insurance policies and send them to a landing page offering health insurance policies. They, by the way, do this on the competitor searches. They think that if somebody's searching for their competitor, they just have an ad that offers their policy. And that's stupid. That generally doesn't work, because that's not what the user's there for. they're looking for how to buy the best policy, you have an ad that says how to buy the best policy, don't get, how to buy the best policy and not get ripped off, 7 things to avoid when buying a policy or whatever. Because the negative angle usually gets a better response than a purely positive one. And then with that, you send them to a page that has really good content on it, and either you can do an ebook there, which is generally more so what I would start with there, or you can just have a really good article that's so good, and then of course have a call to action to get like an enhanced or bonus content or whatever about how to get like the best price on the policy or whatever. Figure out how, you get the general idea. And so with that, you're just trying to capture the email. You're not trying to go for the sale. And so with that, you want to have this data-driven attribution so that, because somebody's read that content or downloaded that information, ultimately, when they go to make the other search for health insurance products at some point, which they're likely to do, then it's not the people that are looking for the health insurance products ad click that takes credit for the information seekers. Because a lot of the information seekers that you go after, they're not looking to buy right then. And so, you're trying to get them to either read content, and then so they'll be open so that when they later on search for your product to buy on your market, they're more likely to click on your ads, which they'll be upwards of 4 times more likely to click on your ad when they're searching for health insurance products. If you actually advertised a lot for people, at the stage where they're looking how to buy a good health insurance product, at least for those people who were searching that way and saw your ads. And so this is one way to ratchet up how much money you can make from search ads by going after the people that are now looking for information. Try to get goodwill with those people ahead of time by offering them good information, and maybe you get their email and then do email marketing to them. But with that, generally speaking, all you're going to be able to do with that is just get the person aware of your company. So hopefully they just buy from you on their own, but a lot of it has to do with once they actually are serious to get some quotes, that you're there, they remember you, they're likely to click on your ad and likely to buy from you because you've done all that pre-work. And so in that case, it's not going to make sense for you to, basically run that if you're looking for your, ad and your campaign to show you have a lot of conversions for you to keep running it if you don't have data-driven attribution, because not many people buy after reading an article, even though a bunch of people buy who read the article and click on another ad. And so you just got to know that. And so that's where data-driven attribution really has to be. You have to use data-driven attribution anytime you're doing information-driven and then also like purchase-driven, search targeting like that, if you will, or doing display advertising on Google Display Network and targeting people on Google search itself, so that you can at least get some data going for, the other ads that are supposed to be marketing to people earlier on in the process. So you can kind of see, okay, this ad works over this ad, or in general, I can see this is kind of working, so I'm not going to give up on it. The other thing to mention, the only other downside or there is a downside, as I mentioned, I would mention that on this video, to the data-driven here. Why? So you might be saying, well, why is it you would ever use last click? The only downside to the data-driven attribution type is it undercounts brand traffic itself, making it seem less valuable than it actually is. Okay? So what I mean by that is, of course, going back to the whole kind of rant that I had about brand, you always want to do brand, even if you rank first organically for your brand and nobody else is advertising on your brand search itself, I would still do brand because of all the misspellings and people that can't quite remember how to spell your brand name or your product name or your trade name or whatever. And so with that, if you use data-driven, it'll actually take some wind away from and making the brand look not quite as good as it was. So you may be saying on the brand, I don't want my bidding to be so high that I'm not to the point where you're not getting 100% impression share, or in other words, your ad's eligible to show 100% of the time because you're you're starting to bid lower because it's not showing the cost per lead or cost per sale that you want. And so the simple thing to deal with that is to say, I want to be able to, no matter what conversions the brand campaigns show, I want to show up 100% of the time, no matter what. That would be my simple advice to you. Respectively with that, it's important to evaluate, each brand term. If you sell Fishing Poles USA as your company name, and you got to be able to bid on all the variants of your brand name, including Fishing Poles US, because it's close to your brand name, and a lot of people will, of course, search that because they thought that's what your brand name was, and they couldn't quite remember. And there's enough of them that you can bid separately for just that. And with that, though, so when they type it, it's an arbitrary term. Fishing Poles US might be people looking for fishing poles in the US, not our company. So in that case, you got to be able to see, does that term convert or not itself. And if you're doing data driven, now that particular search term looks less profitable. Whereas if you were doing last click, it looks profitable and you would keep doing it. So it can be, you can be easily kind of dissuaded from doing as much brand advertising as you were itself. Whereas I'm going to just tell you, in advance, pretty much, you always want your brand terms to show, regardless of what that ROI shows. Now, it kind of obviously does. There's a line in which the terms that are close to your brand name, you got to think about that a little bit. But for the most part, if you think half of the people or more of the people of the brand terms you're bidding on are wanting your stuff, you bid high enough to have your stuff shown all the time. And it's important to have multiple. It's important to pay attention to the fact that if you're using data driven, that your conversions from brands going to look less when you have multiple competitors bidding on the same terms. So if you have 4 people that show up, have ads showing before they ever get to your organic listing, then it's even more important to be able to show up number 1, because those people will definitely, people get confused and click those other ones for one, but they'll be able to pick off a lot of those customers that were supposed to be a gimme for you. They were searching for your company to buy, or they got a referral and they had intention to buy. Now they're going to somebody else because of those other ads are there. And all of a sudden, if your brand conversions look less, and then you're like, I don't know if I should bid so high, and so therefore I'm only getting 50% impression share. Now these competitors are going to be getting a larger chunk of the people that were just going to come to your site and buy, whereas before the conversions were higher, so you're willing to keep your bids higher and get and make sure less of your competitors who want to bid on your terms will get it, because you're going to be number 1 all the time, versus you might be 4 and those 3 ahead of you now because you're bidding less because you see less conversions on that brand campaign. Now they're going to be getting a lot more of those easy customers. You should be willing to basically pay whatever Google wants to get as many of those easy brand search customers, so to say, to your site as possible. In other words, it's very, very hard to not make money from brand searches. You're able to spend more than your competitors. So if the conversions show less, don't fall into the trap basically of, I'm going to bid less because it doesn't look like it converts that well. If you're using the data-driven attribution type, just bid enough to get 100% impression share for all your terms. Overall, what you're able to generate in terms of sales from your overall PPC budget will be much better, because you're not going to have a leaky lower part of your funnel that you pay, $2, $3, $4, $5, $10 a click to get someone to your site, but you're not willing to pay $1 for somebody to make sure they can click on your ad when they make a brand search or a product name search later on for your products, to go to your site every time, versus just some of the time, and some of the other times they're seeing your competitor ad and clicking on that and getting distracted, and then just never coming to your site at all, and finish the purchase they were intending to purchase in the first place. So in short, just know that your brand's suddenly not going to look nearly as good, but you should still bid high to get every single brand click you can anyway. And if you're using ads to go after people that are doing information seeking first, and then people that are looking to buy a product. You need data-driven attribution to make the information seeking targeting or targeted ads for those people that are looking for information only, that they show that they're they're able to work, and you get data on those, because otherwise the lower the ads for the product where they're searching for the product or service directly and to buy it are going to take credit for all your stuff. And if you sell something over $100 product or service and you run the brand ads, you definitely want data-driven attribution, because brand is going to take credit for all of it, even though your brand's important, but you also don't want to give up on your non-brand searches just because brand is taking up all the credit for the searches. So anyway, that's in general what I wanted to share about this data-driven attribution type and Google Ads, and that's pretty much everything that I would say if I were to tell a friend what they needed to know about this. And so with that, you should be good to go. And probably, if you haven't done it, switch to data-driven attribution. If you sell a more expensive product or service, it'll do you some good, as long as you, of course, don't forget the things I said about brand, and with that, you'll be okay. So if you liked the video, I would appreciate it if you would give it a thumbs up, and consider subscribing to the channel, because I have a ton of other stuff on this channel where I release stuff that's working at our firm, that we do for our clients, that we're testing out. When it works, we share it with you guys on this channel. You can learn a lot about actual money-making strategies and methods on this channel that are working in today's environment, because I'm sharing those all the time. If you have any questions about data-driven attribution here, leave me a comment down below. I get back to every single person who leaves me a comment on this channel, usually within a day or two time. I also have a blog at guaranteedppc.com/blog with step-by-step instructions on how to build PPC campaigns the way that I build them here for our clients to actually guarantee their results. So if you want to see how things are done on a more step-by-step basis here at our firm, that can get you results basically every time. That'll be able to beat your competitors, given this is stuff that 99% of people are not doing, and therefore put you in position to beat your competitors for sure every time. You should check out that blog as well, because there might be some information there that could be helpful to you as well. What happens with why you want the brand campaigns essentially is somebody will, and particularly when you sell a more expensive item, the time in which a person goes to your site and is initially researching what to buy, and the time that they actually buy, the more expensive the product or service you have, the longer of time it takes, that window of time is from the time that they initially search for the product or service and then they actually buy, because they got to do more research, they got to think about it more, they have to wait to get paid, whatever. And so the longer it is, the fuzzier their memory gets about what the name of your product or service or company is to find your site again. And so people will misspell your name as they go back to Google and try to type in to go to your site and buy, because today's the day to buy. And if you don't have your brand ad there to cover all the misspellings, which brand campaigns do very, very well, and it's the one reason why you do brand campaigns, you'll not have a leaky funnel, if you will. You'll get those gimme sales, and more importantly, it gets all the money you invested to get that person to initially aware of your product that cost $2, $3, $4, $10 a click to get to your site. You don't blow it by not having the person be able to find you at the last second, which that costs almost no money to get a brand search click, and why you have a brand campaign. Of course, the other reason why is people can advertise actually on your brand campaigns, and your competitors can pick off your customers when they search, and then they're going to buy today. They know they're going to buy, and they got to scroll past 4 other people trying to get them right before they purchase. Respectively, that's the other reason why you do brand ads. But more so, it's even just the misspellings and making sure you always are findable, because you won't rank for all the different misspellings and ways that people type in your brand campaign wrong. And if you don't believe me, you could run a brand campaign and actually go into the search terms report to see what variations of your brand name people are typing in. You'll see for yourself. And you'll also see how people, you know, they use the wrong words. And so you could cover all those people that are commonly using the wrong word. One of the words in your brand name, they're using the wrong word, and you can advertise there and make sure you don't lose those sales as they come in at the last minute. So respectively, you want brand campaigns. And when you're using brand campaigns and you sell something over $100, then with that, data-driven attribution, whereas I would use linear before, at least, so that we're not having the brand campaigns look like they're doing everything, and then with that we don't have any data or knowledge that the non-brand campaigns are working. We use data-driven because we're able to pick up more conversions, like I said, and they can not just weight evenly the first ad that got their attention so that it gets half the value, and the brand campaign gets the other half of the value. The initial ad that did the heavy lifting can get, you know, 80% of the value along. So it does a better job of properly distributing the value of the conversion to campaigns that we know we needed to get the sale, in which if they weren't there, the brand campaign just never would have been able to deliver anything. So on the flip side, by the way, if you have something that's cheaper, and therefore you probably also do a lot of repeat sales, that's how your business works, the last click attribution can actually work to your favor, because if you don't do respectively with that, you have repeat customers, you kind of want to not have the campaigns bleed into one another, so to say, okay? And so if the brand campaign is getting, a lot of people will just be coming back to your site to purchase again through your brand campaign, and I want to analyze that brand campaign traffic separately, and the non-brand campaign, I want to analyze that separately. So it's kind of a, you know, on the flip side, just so you know, I would a lot of times more so just use the last click, also because people usually buy right away. There's never you know, if you're going to buy a $20 broom, you're not going to come back to the site, you know, 2 days later after thinking about it. You generally always buy right away or not, and therefore you don't need the data-driven approach, which can muddy up the waters on which, you know, you're counting on Google to kind of decide which, you know, campaign got what, and when you factor in that somebody can come back to the site multiple times to purchase, the data can get screwed up, and I would just say keep it simple with the last click in that case. Okay, so if you sell something fairly expensive and you do brand campaign, data-driven can really make sure your non-brand campaigns will have enough data to optimize and that you don't give up on them. Another thing is, if you're doing any kind of multi-step marketing process, this data-driven attribution type can really work to your favor. And so with that said, if we're selling fishing rods, you know, a typical, you know, situation at our firm, we'll have a client, you always start with the easy stuff first. So we'll go after people that want to type in like fishing rods for sale. Let's say it could even be best fishing rods, whatever. They're looking to buy a fishing rod. We'll monetize that to the fullest extent we can, or get to a plateau where we're just not getting any more conversions at the cost per conversion we need. So then we'll try to get into potentially, you know, at that point, we'll get into the next closest thing that's to, you know, the person that's sure that they're going to purchase, which is people who are looking for what's the best fishing rod to buy, or tips for buying the best fishing rod. And in that case, we'll want to send them to content, because if we just send them to our product, they're not ready for that. It's going to not work that great. The quality scores will be poor. A lot of people make this mistake. They make the mistake, it's a similar mistake people make with competitor campaigns, where they target their competitors' keywords. They don't want to see what you have to sell. They want to see why you're better than that competitor, and you say that on your ad, and then you say it on the landing page you take people to, and then it works well. In this case, it's the same way. How can we put a piece of information together that matches what the user's searching for? If they're looking how to select the right fishing rod, and we have a ad, the 7 things you need to know to select the right fishing rod, and the pitfalls that people commonly the pitfalls that people fall for, if you will. And if we could package that up into a piece of content and have that ad for that content show up when somebody searches for how to buy the best fishing rod, then we can market to that person before they are going to inevitably, or hopefully we should say, going to search for fishing rods for sale a little later, because they don't make a search to how to buy the best fishing rod until, unless they're pretty sure they're going to be buying one. They just want to do the right research quick first. And they read our content, and because they read our content, they're 4 times as likely that when they actually search for, and we know this because we ran these studies before, when they actually search for fishing rods for sale, they're 4 times as likely to click on our ad, and multiple factors more likely to convert. And so the reason why you run those ads towards the people that are doing the research is, a good chunk of it is to make sure that when people go ahead and make that search, your other ads can perform. Because generally, as they're doing research, you can't really convert that into a sale, at least right away. But with that, and how this all ties in with the data-driven and just attribution types and for tracking on Google Ads in general here, is when they're looking for that, they're looking for how to pick the best fishing rod, or how to buy the best fishing rod, I should say, and they find our content and they go to our page, they can analyze how many of those people later on go purchase, and they can also more heavily weigh whether or not that page actually resulted in that was a valuable piece to get people in our market to buy from us, and can put and more heavily weight that, so we know if we need to keep going with it or not. Versus definitely with last click, and more so than even linear, because respectively, somebody that reads an article for 15 minutes, a branded article about everything they need to know to buy the best fishing rod, that can get them to be 5 times more likely to purchase if they later on make a search, and then with that our other ad shows up for them as we're placed to be there when they're looking for fishing rods for sale. Google can see that as highly valuable, in that not everybody who, of course, reads that article is going to buy. Maybe it's only 1% of those people that read that article that's going to buy. But the people who later on click on another ad where we're actually selling fishing rods, they can see the initial click to read our content first had a huge impact on whether or not, when that person made that search for fishing rods for sale, is going to buy from us or not. And when they clicked on our ad, of course, will they click on our ad? And then after, will they buy after they clicked on our ad? So it can be good for those so-called multi-step processes that you may have, multi-step funnels that you have through Google search, or it could be a display advertising ad that you're running, because a lot of times, in conjunction with what I just described, we'll have that same content, how to buy the best fishing rod, and things that you don't know that that hurt people when buying a fishing rod. Package that content up and have it run as a banner ad on websites that are similar in content. So if they get to another article, but they also have advertising running on that site, we can have our banner ad running there and divert them to our article, knowing that if they read our article and they're going to search later on for a fishing rod, they're 5 times as likely to end up in our buying our product, and makes the amount of people that are searching for fishing rods for sale at any given time. We just opened up the pool of people that we can get to buy from us, given there's only so many searching. By marketing to them early, we get more of the available people searching to buy from us. Multiple factors more to buy from us. And so anyway, whether you're doing a display ad and then hoping them to click on a search ad, or a search ad and then another search ad, particularly as they're doing research and then getting to buy, that's another situation where the data-driven attribution can do a great job figuring out that content, how valuable truly is it to your campaign, and so that to run with it longer, and specifically which ones to run. Maybe some other ones aren't very good, but you'll have a lot more awareness about which ones to run and how strong you should run them, basically. The other thing to mention here about the data-driven, and also you want to say this with linear, data attribution types. The only downside is that it undercounts brand traffic, making it seem less valuable than it is. So on the flip side, it makes the non-brand traffic easier to optimize. Google their algorithm has more data to optimize the non-brand traffic for you. You have more data to optimize the non-brand traffic. But then the brand traffic is not valued as highly, so if you're coming in and deciding what you're going to bid for the brand traffic, not knowing, let's say everything that I know when, as far as how valuable brand traffic is, and you may say, other people may, including maybe yourself, could say, well, I still have my organic listing, I rank for that, so ultimately, it's only saying I'm getting a few conversions and it's a fairly high cost per conversion. How about I lower the bid on the brand keywords so that my cost per conversion is a little bit better? And you might do that because you switch to the data-driven attribution where brand traffic doesn't look as profitable anymore. What I'm telling you is that can very well be a mistake. I'm going to generally bid high enough so that I get 100% impression share on all our brand traffic, and that impression share is the percentage of time that your ad's eligible to show up on Google search for your given keywords. If we're advertising, we're always going to do brand ads for the reasons I told you, but we're also going to want to show up 100% of the time or 90% plus, just as a general goal. Why? Because those ads are always going to be profitable, and even more than that, like I said, we want to make sure the other ads that we're running that did all the heavy lifting to get that person wanting to buy from us, we don't lose it at the last second, because it makes the other ads the non-brand ads, way more difficult to get working if we keep losing sales at the last second to some other competitor who's there, or they just don't remember our brand name. So anyway, keep that in mind. If the brand campaigns suddenly looks less valuable, it's just not as valuable or not valuable, I would recommend 9 times out of 10, you want to bid as much as you can to get every last brand click you can, because that's going to make your whole overall budget, your PPC budget you have to spend, work better. Not having that last part of your sales process and funnel inefficient in simple terms. I also put here, it's important when you have multiple competitors bidding on your brand terms as well. Of course, if you have different people actually showing up on your brand searches, it's even more important to make sure you don't undervalue brand so that you're there above them. Because if you let other people be above you, and there's going to be a higher percentage of people that get diverted towards those competitors, and with how profitable brand in general is, just don't make the mistake of saying, well, I want to do less than 100%, because generally speaking, it never makes sense. You can just take my word for that. And you may, going back to the example before I gave you about the fishing rods, if your company is, like I mentioned before, Fishing Rods USA, with that said, there are certain brand keywords that you're going to advertise on that are close to your brand for the people who can't remember the exact brand name that you had, and they're going to make mistakes on certain words, like I said. So you'll advertise for Fishing Rods US, not Fishing Rods USA, and you're going to try to get as many clicks from that as you can. Any term that has at least 50% or more of the people that are searching for it are meant to go to your site, you want 100% impression share coverage on those terms, because it's always going to be profitable, basically speaking. And you'll have to make the decision if it's less than half to what you're going to do necessarily with those. But in other words, to keep it simple, I'll do 100% impression share and whatever bid it takes to get 100% impression share on all brand terms. And if it's not valuable enough to do that, I just don't target that brand term, to keep it simple. And that always works out for us to get the most sales out of our budget as possible, not losing sales at the last second to competitors and to people who can't quite remember how to type in our name. And so, respectively, on that example though, Fishing Rods US, where they type that in our name as Fishing Rods USA, we're going to have less conversion data showing that works. We may just shut that off when really we switched over to data-driven attribution. The other campaigns that we had that got their attention initially got most of the weighting now, and we may just shut that Rods US off, given, you know, we think, oh, it's not working that well, and maybe a lot of these people are just looking for USA made fishing rods. And so with that said, you can shut off keywords that will affect all the rest of your campaigns that get people's attention initially, i.e. non-brand campaigns. So it's another thing to kind of consider here. And so the easy way to kind of get around it is, like I said, if it's a brand term and you think 50% or more of people searching for this term here are trying to go to us to buy or call us or whatever, we want to bid as high as it takes, or as much as it takes, to be at 100% impression share for those terms, because we need to do that to be able to get the rest of the campaigns we have that drive new traffic into our brand to be profitable and to work properly in general. And that's an easy way to compensate for the downside of using data-driven attribution, where brand campaigns muted in terms of its seeming role into what's producing the sales on our Google Ads account. And with that, you get all the upsides of using the data-driven attribution for all the people where you know that come back later, and to be able to have your non-brand campaigns run better. You have more data to run on them. They have more overall potential from those non-brand campaigns, and so forth. And of course, if you have information campaigns that offer information that are set up or display campaigns set up to get people familiar with your brand before they are going to make a product or service related search where they're looking to buy your service or product, you can get the data-driven attribution, like I said, to get those information or awareness campaigns to be profitable for you, given that you're going to have more information to see those are actually working. And so, of course, the last thing to kind of recap here, last click attribution may be better if you sell something under $100 and you have a lot of repeat business, because you don't want your attribution bleeding into each other, because the algorithm won't understand customers versus non-customers. If you have people calling in, they can't see some of that data. And even if you do have 90+% of your people buying through the cart, respectively, it's also still may get a little bit confused. Whereas, of course, they do purchase through your cart 100% of the time or near. Data-driven attribution wouldn't really be that bad, but where you have repeat customers, and people are buying either on the first visit or not at all, I pretty much would say last click attribution can be easier for you to make decisions as to what to use first and what is profitable, what to stay with, what not to stay with, how to divvy your budget up to certain parts of the account that are working better than others, and reallocating budget and all that. So anyway, with all that said, that's everything I know about data-driven attribution that I can share with you, stuff you need to know to be able to use it. You should be able to get a nice boost on your campaigns if you're selling something expensive, or have campaigns to get awareness, and then campaigns to where people are looking to buy what you have, buy a product or service today, like I said. And of course, how to deal with the brand, the muting of the importance of brand with all of that. Hope you enjoyed the video. I have a lot of other videos on this channel about other PPC money-making strategies. You should consider subscribing to this channel if you want to learn how to make a ton of money with PPC. I'd appreciate it as well if you could give this video a like so other people can find it. The algorithm will be able to more easily get the information out there to people who need it. If you have any questions about data-driven attribution or anything I talked about in this video, leave me a comment below. I get back to every single person who leaves me a comment on this channel. I also have a blog, by the way, at guaranteedppc.com/blog with step-by-step instructions on how to build PPC campaigns the way that I build them here for our clients to guarantee their results. And so if you want to look for information along those same lines, you can definitely find it there, and may help you out as well. But yeah, I hope to see you on my next one, where I'll have another great piece of information and strategy that we're using here at Guarantee PPC for our clients that's working, that I can share with you to help you make even more money with your PPC endeavors there at your company. So with that, I'll let you go. See you then.